personal best. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated. Story number 1. Leave Her Johnny, written by Dragonson04. Humans continue to astonish me. Their art, their many desperate cultures, their incredibly bloody history. And yet, they stand amongst the best of the galaxy in many fields. Their sense of community and family is, as you all well know, second to none. An aspect of that is their ability to pack bond with literally anything. And that is what I wish to tell you of now. I happened to be on a human station during a ceremony. I honestly thought that it was one of their funerals. So much sadness was in the air. It was almost a physical feeling. I thought that some great human had died, perhaps some admiral or general, maybe the head of state or a leader of a nearby human colony. The one that had died was Mother. Or at least the humans called her that. In reality, she was the ship. The UES, United Earth System Adventure. The oldest, literally, in fact, the first human ship that used FTL drives to escape their own home system. She was a functional fossil, for lack of a better term, proudly served on by nearly 30 generations of crew over literal centuries, maintained with love and care for her entire service. And now, her time was done. The amount of work for her to keep up with the armament, armor, and speed would have been far too much. It would have been cheaper to build 5 ships of the same size with more modern equipment than it would have been to refit her. Within the confines of the dock, she sat, regal and proud, seemingly unaware of her great age. She was covered from stem to stern in decorations. She had been fully decommissioned and ready to begin her life as a museum piece on the station. The humans were sat facing the stand and a podium where her last captain would likely give a lengthy speech, and then she would be officially a museum piece. But the humans astonished me yet again. Rather than a last captain, a musical leader stood at the podium, motioned for the entire crowd to stand, and the lyrics of an old sea shanty were displayed on a hollow projector. As one, they sang, male and female voices. Nearly the entirety of her last 3 crews sang the song. They sang to say goodbye to her and to each other, and someone named Johnny for some reason. I didn't even know her, and yet I found myself crying at the ceremony. I learned a few things there. First, humans are very good singers. Second, human love transcends the border between living and non-living things. Third, their ability to pack bond is something to behold. Fourth, you don't need to be alive to have life that'll be mourned and a soul that'll be missed when you are gone. End of story. Story number 2. Close Enough, written by Talma Cole. Iron may have been obligated to allow these humans inside her beloved ship, but she could not be ordered to enjoy this disruption to her delicate work. 1,000 sensors, perfectly calibrated and linked to her own workstation, were being disrupted by the clumsy apes as they stomped around, setting up their own crude equipment. They had been civil enough and had even attempted to explain their motives, but Iron needed no explanation from these primitives. They desired telemetry for her own vessel's guidance. Despite her protests with command, the humans had insisted that simply linking their networks, as all other ships in their mixed fleet did, would not be sufficient for the task. Perhaps if she could explain just how futile their efforts to make use of such advanced technology were, they would accept their own limitations and get off of her ship. Her complex webs of data couldn't be understood by simple biped who lacked the finesse of a master of data. Human Telfid, you cannot make use of that data port without disrupting the underlying purpose. Telford was busy meddling with some archaic device, but took the time to simply smile and spoke with that same vibrating pulse that had caused another dozen instruments to go out of alignment. "Thank you, Iron, but I don't need the gravity entanglement sensor's temporal predictions. I just need the center of mass for our own fleet and the Orcs fleet. I can calculate the center of mass for both fleets with that." "Human Telford, that data is useless without temporal prediction. If you would please just allow me to Wait, why would you want a single center of mass?" Another smile, this time with a hint of mischief. "Iron, I thought you didn't want to know what we were doing. Irrelevant, I think you told me." "It is. I just think that I can save us all a great deal of time if I can convince you that my data is too precise for you to make use of. My talents are better utilized as a fleet observer and strategic assessment vessel, not indulging in a newborn race." Again, with that smile. "Iron, I think your ship is a marvel, and I'm sorry we need to borrow her for a little bit. But I really think you're going to like this once we're done. Now, if you want me off your ship, I can do that for you faster if you help me out here. I need you to give me data grid with an X, Y, and a Z of my ships and the Orcs' capital ship positions and their relative vectors." Iron flexed all 12 of her limbs out and felt her tactile sensors. She could feel the humans' absurd vessels down to the nanometer at this range. There was something deeply unsettling about the humans being so eager to help with this war. An infant race that hadn't even left their own solar system, insisting on joining a battle of titans with a vessel built out of scrap and bits of junk that they'd blasted into orbit on chemical rockets. They hadn't even gotten to the battle on their own power. They had hired a Melindro merchant to jump tow them to the assembly point. The vessel was approximately 1,200 meters long, but the majority of the ship was just a tube with what appeared to be a cobbled-together fusion containment chamber at one end. The bridge wasn't even attached to the bulk of the ship properly, using some sort of giant mechanical hinge instead of a rigid construction. By contrast, the Orcs capital ship was a crown jewel of her hated enemy's fleet, layers of barriers preventing her from feeling it the way that she could the human ship, but its exact location and vector were easy enough to determine. Several times while she caressed the ship, the microwaves and the gravitational vibrations she felt could urge to recoil. The ship was clearly an apex predator, waiting to feast upon smaller ships of the Alliance. "Human Telford, I've done as you've asked and linked all data with your crude human ship." Curious, Iron's predictive sensors weren't starting to pulse with uncertainty. Something was going to happen in the near future. Entangled matter sensors in theory sense vibrations in the future, but the data could only be used to increase vigilance. The two fleets were still assembled outside of any effective weapons range. This shouldn't be happening. Iron immediately tried to scan for any hidden vessels in the area, but found that the humans' meddling had blinded some of her finer senses. She checked the rest of the observation ships and found that they were also getting a telltale flickers of impending events. Was this due to the data telemetry coming online? "That's great, Iron. Data is coming online now. Now, if we could just get a little help with the primary hull alignment, this is going to come down to about a microsecond of angle." Crude translation, but the human wanted to alter his vessel's vector by several millionths of a degree. Easy to measure, but impossible to correct with fusion thrusters. "Human Telford, I've updated your request to the data stream, but you won't be able to make such fine adjustments with such a large..." "How are you doing that?" "Wait, you have a chemical thrusters on the bow. Why?" Iron could actually smell the chemical puffs as the human ship made unimaginably small corrections to its heading. Again, the entanglement matter sensors were pulsing. Whatever was going to happen was becoming more certain. No doubt, it was the human ship's maneuver. She was assisting them in a dramatically altering future events. "Nice and easy now. Hold it steady. Iron, you sure you have all of this right?" "Arrogance! How dare this human question her measurements? She could feel the irregularities of the paint at this range. She could read the ship's lettering just by slightly different chemical makeup, rather than optically reading it. Boomstick. Why, this human needed such absurdly well-calibrated data for the scrap heap of a ship was the only thing that she couldn't quantify. Yes, you bumbling ape, I'm certain to a millionth of a meter and a billionth of a degree. Telford laughed and smashed the button on his device with a far more force than was needed. Close enough. The entanglement sensors all reset at the same time. Then every conventional sensor on the ship went blind for a fraction of a second. As they started to come back on, she saw the human's mechanically connected bridge had swung down and the engines were at full burn. The beautiful soup of radiation was pouring out of the front tube. The engines and the mechanical device were for recoil. She measured the mass of the ship again and saw it was missing over 2,000 kilograms of mass. There were trace amounts of U-235 mixed in with a cloud coming out of the ship's bow. They had detonated a fission bomb inside their own ship. Fuck that guy in particular, cackled Telford. The Ukran ship was simply gone. Pieces of it were moving in respective fractions of the speed of light, and second collisions were causing havoc to the rest of the Ukran fleet. Off by about 15 meters, Iron. Boomstick, load up another one while we try and figure this out. This ridiculous ape wanted to do it again. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and